Sitting with all the boys waiting for the Battlefield 2042 trailer. Excited because all the leaks point towards a new modern Battlefield title. We've gone through Battlefield 1 and it was a masterpiece. We've gone through Battlefield 5 and it later on became good. A stunning narrative teased throughout the promotional content and admittedly fantastic setup for what could be a brilliant narrative. Now with the trailer released, we are definitely ready to game. Cool soldiers with relatively modern gear, airsoft edgelord with a knife, a super cool Battlefield moment to be a love letter to the fans, another cool Battlefield moment calling back to a sick clip as a part of the love letter to the fans, massive fuck off tornado to make the maps interesting, likely with a lot of destruction. Now, I ain't gonna lie to you fellas, that trailer was honestly up there. DICE's marketing team hits hard and the hype was unreal. Gameplay trailers drop, short cinematics drop such as the Exodus, which built so much hype.
36 hours to door. Get ready to fight!
EA partnered Battlefield YouTubers leaking content like no tomorrow. The beta comes out, and with the promise of more content on release, it looked pretty good, and it was pretty fun. 12th of November 2021, The Dark Days. Loading up the game with all the boys and you search for a lobby. All fun and games until you're met with possibly the least amount of content a Battlefield title has ever come out with. The shittiest hit registration you've ever seen. The gunplay made Fallout New Vegas look like it should have been an FPS game. Hovercrafts being able to disintegrate the entire enemy team and fly across the map. The worst weapon balloon you have ever seen. It makes the Rust recoil update look normal. Only specialists so everyone has a protagonist complex. The aforementioned specialists having the shittiest voice lines you've ever heard, considering the post-apocalyptic background of the game. Yeah, remember the Exodus? How everything's dark and gritty? Yeah, they completely undid all of that. Loading into games where the pre-game cutscene breaks, the worst mouse input you've ever seen, going out of the map like you were no-clipping to GM Construct Skybox in Gary's mod, almost no destruction and only one natural disaster that occurs which only flings you across the map. Now this was what a real love letter to the fans looked like, and all game developers should take note for the future.
I told you it's not ready yet.
Honey, just show it to them.
My God, son, that's wonderful.
I would be lying if there wasn't some good that came out of 2042 at launch. The new attachment system where you could change attachments whilst deployed was pretty baller. Battlefield Portal was also pretty baller. The loss in consumer confidence for EA was pretty baller. And in all honesty, I got a genuine hot take. I like the soundtrack, but before you lose your shit, allow me to explain. 2042's entire story was meant to be based around a post-apocalyptic setting where the world has practically fallen apart due to a multitude of reasons. On its own, the soundtrack sounds fucking stupid. It literally sounds like two elephants fucking. It sounds like some shit you would hear from Black Mountain Radio and Fallout New Vegas. But I'm confident that had there been a story or was used in the better context of 2042, it would have been pretty good. What do you get when you make a shitty product or game? You get a loss of players and a shit ton of negative reviews, some constructive, some that are typed out like an angry Anglo at a pub. Overall, the game was dying and it died pretty fast. EA was on massive damage control, devs were trying to reach out, which honestly was a good thing, game journalists soyed out with justification for once. Overall, EA was in the shitter. The love letter to the fans had utterly failed and it was time for someone else to pick up the pieces. Initial fixes related to mouse input, weapon balancing such as with Bloom, vehicle balancing and optimization because the game ran as well as Fallout 76 on launch after that. All was relatively quiet on the development front for the next couple months, with the occasional bug fix skirmish or vehicle balance because at launch it was near impossible to play as regular infantry. Like remember those Operation Locker 24/7 servers? Yeah, that would never happen on 2042. Anyways, all we could do was really wait until Season 1 dropped. And Season 1 did drop, ladies and gentlemen. A new map called Exposure came in, and in all honesty, it was pretty fucking fun. A variety of areas to fight in, whether that be close quarters or on the open fields of Canada. A new specialist, which, let's be real, specialists do suck, but you gotta make do. And 2 new weapons, alongside more quality of life improvements. game numbers grew again, and there was more positive light on 2042 after Season 1 drop. Let's take a look at the biggest part of the update, which was Exposure. Exposure is a map set in Canada and took upon the feedback given about all the maps during a game release. Vehicles were far too prevalent, not enough close quarters combat, and not enough cover, but Exposure changed that with a variety of areas that nerf vehicles, a series of close quarters areas, which sometimes remind me of Operation Locker, and a shit ton of cover above ground. This is what 2042 needed, and it seemed like after all that time the developers finally got the message. The specialist included in the update was also pretty good, with Liz specialising in destroying vehicles with a guided AT launch as a response to vehicles being overpowered. Overall, the update was a massive success, but at the same time the realisation dawned that the damage was already done to the game. Update 1.2 released on August 2nd was also another update which did wonders to the game, hosting a fuck ton of bug fixes, change in art style for all the specialists so we didn't need to deal with the atrocious voice lines again, along with a UI update which aimed at making player stats more accessible. Stuff that in all honesty should have been there at launch, but what was the biggest change was the Kaleidoscope rework. Kaleidoscope was one of the more open maps on launch, and this fix added more depth to the map through the placement of more cover and military bases around the map. It was during this time that Renewal was also announced to be next in line for a fix. This update was definitely precedent set that ensured developers were going to follow through with their word. Updates simmered for a short while, the gunfire settled on the development front, until August 30th when Season 2 dropped from the heavens. Another new specialist, another new map, new weapons and vehicles. Crawford was the new specialist, and his gadget, a fucking deployable minigun, and in all honesty it was pretty overpowered when it first released, but it did later on get patched. The new map Stranded is pretty cool. It reminded me of Discard to be honest with you, but it was still pretty baller. The new guns such as the AM40 are pretty good, but I will say that as a whole with the game currently, there is a balancing issue that has plagued every Battlefield title, where assault rifles just stomp on literally everything else. The CRAM is fun to use but annoying as fuck to fight against, but that is most vehicles really, and with everyone having AT launchers, it doesn't take long for them to die. Season 2 also bumped up player numbers again, and overall the update was a good leap in the right direction. Alongside these major updates, as of recent there's been modes to play 2042 but on Battlefield 3 maps, plus you are now able to use some Battlefield 3 weapons without being on Portal. Now, obviously I haven't covered every update, as there have been quite a couple since launch, with a whole lot of optimization and balancing fixes, but these are some of the more recent ones that brought significant results. But fellas, I have some good news for you, and for the future. A recent roadmap and development announcement showed us that specialists won't be anymore, which means classes are coming back. Classes and quote a bunch of fixes are all planned for Season 3, but I guess all we can do is really find out and wait. Ultimately, 2042 released in an objectively fucked state, and now we're seeing a good recovery. I genuinely think that now it's worth taking another shot with the game and reinstalling it or even buying it off G2A for a sweatshop worker's paycheck. There is still hope for the game, and we should look forward to a single player experience, but we still gotta wait for more news on that, due to them clarifying that it may just not be for 2042. I also hope that EA and DICE don't just abandon it after making it something relatively playable, like they've done with previous games, as there are still lots of opportunities with the game. And for any future Battlefield titles, they just simply need to look back on 3 and 4 and just realise what made those games great. A story, graphics which look good close to a decade later, Levolution that is actually impactful on the map, a variety of weapons and vehicles, faceless grunts fighting in a detailed and immersive environment. It is the identity of Battlefield, and what has separated from COD and other traditional FPS games. Battlefield 2042 still lacks a lot of what made Battlefield a Battlefield game, but it would be incredibly disingenuous if I didn't mention that the game itself has improved from a product that should have never been put on the market. That is really all from me. All I can really leave you with is give the game a chance and remain critical when AAA companies output garbage onto the market with the expectation they won't be judged.